Everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the PowettPlay podcast. I'm joined today as always by my co-host Kieran. How are you, Kai?
I'm a bit sad. I'm obviously from the events of the weekend with the Super 50, but very happy to have Will on, so Absolutely. Not too bad.
And we've joined by a very special guest, Will Gaffney, who's the founder of the Bat for a Chance Foundation. Will, thank you very much for joining us. Can you just sort of go into a bit of detail about the foundation, obviously what you do and how it all came about?
Yeah, sure. Cheers for having me on, chaps. Really appreciate it. The pleasure's all mine. I guess to take you all the way back to the beginning where it started for me, I was back in Sri Lanka around 2016 time, country pretty close to the hearts of you both, I'm pretty sure, where I was on cricket tour playing against loads of sides all around the island, and I saw sort of the big thing that struck me was the lack of cricket equipment, and also how powerful cricket is for so many people around the world. And then reflecting on the tour a couple of years later, at the grand old age of 14, I mustered up the confidence to start sending out some emails to tea plantations and foundations in Sri Lanka, pitching this idea essentially of collecting and recycling cricket equipment from here in the UK and then distributing it back overseas to Sri Lanka, because as I'm sure you guys are aware, equipment is so expensive, so hard to come by, and a real stumbling block for so many people looking to formally engage with the game. After about 6 weeks or so, I finally heard back and looped in my parents into this sort of madness, crazy idea that I'd come up with. And Bat for a Chance was born. We are now a fully UK registered charity, operating out of London here in the UK. We sent shipments all around the world. We've impacted over 15,000 people worldwide, 4 different continents, 60 plus causes. It's really grown over the past 5 years or so. I'm 19 now, and it's kind of been with me throughout my whole teenage years. And yeah, it's been a proper roller coaster, but really, really love it to bits.
No, I can imagine. So obviously, this idea came, and obviously it's a lovely, thoughtful process in terms of what you're trying to do. But how did you actually get off the ground? Obviously, I know you mentioned there you reached out to a few people. So who was it who sort of came back, and how did the ball get sort of rolling with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm sure Kai will agree with me here. A lot of luck comes from hard work, and I think that's definitely something that I've found. At the start for me, it was very much reaching out to people, cold calling, writing cold emails, getting email addresses and contact information off the magical resource we have in the internet. And I'd probably say it took 50 emails to get one back, just to start with, that is. And I think that's a sort of a fair fraction, a fair percentage. And that's where I think things really took a change. So I heard back from the MJF Foundation in Sri Lanka, and they basically introduced me to a guy called Alex Rees, who's actually based out of New Zealand. And he gave me a list of sort of criteria that I needed to hit to make this happen, if you like. Yeah. So he helped explain to me customs. He helped explain to me how much money I might need to raise, what kind of equipment would be of most use, and how to go about it, which was really helpful, I guess, if you like, especially being even younger at the time then, to sort of have 4 clear objectives to go away, really think about and do some research into was really helpful. And then it's kind of just grown very embryonically from there. Our growth has been very natural over the past couple of years. So I hope that answers your question. But I think...
No, definitely. Yeah, it does. So in terms of obviously where you're at now, from you said you're there at 19 and at 15, how has it how's your life developed outside of the Bat for a Foundation? Sorry, Bat for in terms of how's your career path sort of gone so far aligned with this?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think COVID was probably a blessing in disguise for me. Yeah. So it allowed me to essentially not go to school for 2 years, and get a freebie for my GCSEs and just basically pour all my heart and soul into this. Yeah. If I'm being really honest. And then the big sort of thing for me has been how, especially over the past sort of 18 months, how far the charity has grown, juggling that with school. Whilst I was at school, I left this summer, so just on my A-levels. and working out sort of how I would fit sort of meetings, podcasts, media, pitching to various sponsors, etc., around my school life.
Yeah.
And that led to me. I'm probably quite a disorganized person. My mum would definitely say, sort of in my nature, but I had to become very structured, and I think I learned at the age of about 16 that I needed my days to be properly calendared. Otherwise, I'd just be all over the shop. So yeah, one great big juggling act, as I think most people's lives are these days.
No, I definitely get that. In terms of then, as you got the momentum and, you know, you're starting to develop sort of relationships around various countries around the world, which sort of country did you get your foot in that sort of allowed you to sort of develop a bit more sort of prominently?
I think so. Sri Lanka has been a country of massive importance to us as a charity. One, that's where it all began for me, and two, in lockdown in about, I think it was 2020, start 2021, we sort of had our breakout moment, if you like. We did a big kit drop to the Foundation of Goodness with their founder Kushal, and they were set up they sort of came to the fore off the back of the tsunami in the early 2000s. And it's a phenomenal organisation. They've got a whole host of sort of very high-profile cricketers involved as sort of trustees, ambassadors. And we did a big kit drop out to them during the England series, very sort of strategically timed so that we would pick up a bit of press and media for the first time. And we would have access to players and journalists and bits and pieces. And then Kumar Sangakkara basically did this incredible video. The camera explaining what we do, what the shipment's going to do for kids in rural bits of Sri Lanka. And that sort of, I guess, was when we announced ourselves properly to the cricketing space, who we are, what we're trying to do, and has had a real impact on our growth.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, I've seen the video that Kumar did, and I can imagine the impact that had, not just within Sri Lanka, but across the cricketing world itself. I think that it really had that sort of power. So how important have these sort of partnerships been, and these sort of ambassadors that you've had, in terms of the role that they play to help you, really?
They've been crucial. I think, firstly, I'm young and I have no way afraid of that, and to, especially sort of in the early stages, to a lot of corporates and individuals, that was a bit scary. I was a risk. It's not every day you get a teenager knocking on your door asking you for money or support or resources and bits and pieces. But then all of a sudden, if you've got a Chris Jordan, our global ambassador, or Lydia Greenway, or a Dinesh Karthik, someone like that, backing you and behind you very publicly on social media, it gives you a bit more kudos and gravitas. And then, who knows, their kids might be talking about you. And when they go home and they're like, have you come across this charity Back for a Chance? They're more likely to say yes, because they've seen us on social media, etc., bits and pieces like that. So it's been huge. And we try to also provide experiences to our beneficiaries to engage with these people. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and the way we sort of dress it up is, once a kit package arrives, let's take Rwanda for instance, when it arrives and it's cleared through customs and it's being delivered, it's like Christmas for these kids. Brand new cricket equipment or high quality second-hand gears. The smiles on their faces are second to none. And then if you chuck in a cricketing celebrity coming down or sending a video across on top of that, it's double whammy. And you're really starting to inspire some kids to kick on and the next generation of cricket.
Definitely, I think, like you said, in terms of from a logistical perspective, how have you found that? Like you said, it's getting the stuff is obviously tricky at times, but when you've got the stuff, how hard is it to distribute it around the world?
It's a massive challenge, and always has been since the inception of the charity. Customs is no easy feat anywhere in the world, let alone some of the places that we're trying to reach, and that's always a battle. But I think it was a problem a challenge, if you like, which we identified very early on in the journey of the charity, and have since then worked incredibly hard to partner with airlines and logistics companies to underwrite all of our sort of air freight and shipping costs. So it's very rare that nowadays we pay for any of our shipping around the world. Virgin Atlantic have been incredible over the past 2 years in underwriting most of our shipments globally. And then we work with the Woodland Group, who are a part of Virgin's network, to forward and clear our kit through customs free of cost as well. So they'll absorb the customs costs. It's just the negotiating part and making sure that you've got all the forms and the relevant documents and you're in touch with the right ministers, etc. That kind of stuff. So the paperwork is pretty extensive, but it's very much worth it. And I think, especially over the past 2 years, we really sort of got the knack of it.
And have you always had that this sort of entrepreneurial side to you?
Me personally, I don't know. I think you'd be best off asking my mum. Yeah, I think it's very much present throughout the charity. We try and act as if we're a bit of a startup organisation, and the phrase we use internally is entrepreneurial zeal. We want to have entrepreneurial zeal going through everything we do. We want to do things differently, and we want to really make a stamp for being youthful, young, energetic, and a bit out of the box. And I think a part of me also thinks that in the cricketing space in general, having a teenager trying to change things a little bit here and there is a point of view which often isn't heard, and potentially helps a little bit too, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think sort of you were mentioning there about some of the play, obviously with Sri Lanka and stuff. How being involved in sort of the worldwide side of things that you have, I bet you've seen sort of the real opportunities that cricket has from a worldwide perspective. So some of the obvious nations spring to mind, like your Sri Lanka, your Pakistan, and your India. But where have you sort of seen a real interest in the sport where they are lacking that sort of opportunity to sort of play due to sort of, the financial situation that cricket sort of has?
It's a great question. So if you look at the associate nations, and I'm going to take Uzbekistan as an example here. Uzbekistan borders Afghanistan. Right. And as of recently, we've just helped them to establish their first ever women's cricket teams and men's cricket teams, but our support was specifically focused on the women's teams. They're just newly ICC registered, and this is the first time cricket's being formally played. They're being coached by an ex-Afghani test player who's moved to the country. And this is a country where there is simply no cricket shops. There is no cricket equipment in the country. It just doesn't exist. Yeah. There's loads of it next door, but there's none there. Let's go to Uganda. Same story. Wow. Impossible to find cricket equipment. There's probably one or two retailers, and then you've got to pay heavy customs fines, heavy transport costs just to get it into the country. Even in the Caribbean, it's pretty difficult to source, as I'm sure Kai will know. It's really expensive as well. It's only, I'd probably say, countries like India, Pakistan, England, Australia and New Zealand where cricket equipment is readily available, because one, it's either manufactured there, or two, it's much more affluent countries we're talking about in the case of the UK and Australia and New Zealand. So it's a massive issue, and in some cases, as I say, the cricket equipment doesn't even exist.
Yeah. That must be extremely fulfilling, though, when you're going into these sort of places, like you're saying in Uzbekistan, that sort of has, like I said, it doesn't have any access to cricket equipment. So you're not only providing them with cricket equipment, you're also giving them the opportunity to go and, excel themselves in a sport where they're probably passionate for it because of the nature of how sort of cricket is in that sort of part of the world. So it must be extremely fulfilling for yourself. With all the projects that you've done, since you've been going through those, which ones it sort of stand out to you? It's the most sort of like, wow, I can't believe we've actually just achieved something like that.
It's like asking a father to pick their favourite child. That
maybe a bit easier than you think, that question.
I think we've got a phenomenal project in Pakistan, which has had an incredible impact. Working with Ebba Qureshi, who runs an amazing organisation called Fem Games. which is aimed at bringing the UK-based sports curriculum into Pakistan.
Right.
So currently it's optional for girls to participate in sport and games in Pakistan, but it's compulsory for the boys. So quite frequently we don't see girls taking part. And that's what Fem Games are aimed to try and change. And we've worked with them in schools in Islamabad to introduce cricket for girls in these game sessions, which are optional, give it in a safe, comfortable environment. And I'll send some photos over afterwards. And then the reason why this project really comes to mind is there's a story of a girl who was introduced to cricket through the work that we do with Fem Games, started playing, really, really enjoyed it, and then goes home one day and asks her dad to take her to the local cricket club. And her dad is so taken aback by this because, you know, it's quite a male-dominated society, and is thrilled, and now drives her 45 minutes every weekend to go and play with the boys in the local village club. And that's the kind of impact that, you know, we're starting to have all around the world. The other one which really springs to mind is our Afghan refugee work across Europe and here in the UK. Very, very powerful story, in particular with the fall of Kabul a couple of years ago. As I'm sure you will have seen, all the high-profile Afghani cricketers, and Kai, you will have met a fair share of them. Cricket is the one thing that brings them together in a really, really magical way. And if you take someone who's experienced such trauma that some of these kids who've arrived here in the UK, literally off the back of boats, and you give them a bat and a ball, and what that can do for a child's confidence, what that can do to help integrate them into society, into a cricket club, into a community here in the UK, whilst they're trying to find a new home in the first sort of couple of months of them being here, is pretty phenomenal. And I think those two stories really show the soft power, if you like, of one, sport, and two, cricket, particularly for people from these backgrounds.
No, I'm taken back by that, to be honest with you, what you were saying. I think that you can't help but put a massive smile on my face when you were sort of saying that and feeling so warm. And it's, you know, an amazing thing to do. And, you know, you must make so many people happy. And with the way you sort of speaking about the Afghanistan situation, it sort of takes the mind off what's going on, and the fact that, you know, they can have that togetherness and that sort of, you know, sport feeling that, well, any sport has when it's a team environment, really. So I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm taken back by it. I totally am. I sort of wanted to ask you, your role as a young ambassador for the MCC. What is it? How does that sort of work? How does that role sort of play out?
Sure. So that was kicked off was 3 years ago now. And it was basically a fantastic way for me to sort of cement our relationship with the MCC's foundation. So the MCC Foundation do incredible work transforming lives all around the world, namely in East Africa, Nepal, the Lebanon, and then through their hub program here in the UK. And it has allowed me, through being a young ambassador, to help provide equipment to all of their projects globally. So we've supported pretty much all of them around the world, along with setting up a scheme here in the UK where all of their hub participants, for state-educated kids who want free access to cricket, can apply for cricket kit direct from Bat for a Chance, and then we'll basically deliver it to their next hub session. So that solves a massive barrier for them potentially having to come to the hub because the equipment's so expensive. They might be embarrassed in the first place, but now it's on offer and it's free, which is even better. Similarly, working with them, supporting Syrian refugees in the Lebanon. It's been really, really cool through the project Al Sama, and also supporting some of their work in Nepal and East Africa. So it's been fantastic and an opportunity I'm so grateful to have been given by Sarah and the team, because it's really helped to build what is a really magical relationship between the two of us.
Yeah, I can imagine. I feel like I'm just going away myself here, Kai. Is there anything you want to ask?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here. Will, right. Obviously, you know, amazing story. We've been in contact for quite some time now. Emma and I have known you from the beginning. And I think what's sort of pressing in my mind is obviously people are saying what you're doing, but I think if you can sort of explain to people what your family background is, and obviously, you know, the role that your siblings or your mom and dad would have had on you. Because I mean, obviously, people can see what you do, but I think it's important to understand the family structure that sort of puts you in a position to want to do such an endeavor at such a young age.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question. So it's just mum for me. My dad passed away about a year ago now. And I've been brought up in this kind of mindset that you act selflessly and you act for other people. And my parents have been an enormous support for me throughout the whole process. I think my mum's a trustee of the charity, and she comes from a legal background, so that helps massively. You know, I've basically got a legal sounding board at home for all my crazy ideas. And my brother loves his cricket. And my sister is always around the house helping me sort cricket equipment and all sorts of bits and pieces. And they've had to get quite used to having hundreds of cricket bats under the stairs and bits and bobs. But they've never been anything but sort of supportive and encouraging of my ideas. And in particular at the start, before we were in, well, still now to be honest, but before we were in storage units and bits and pieces, all of their garage space and bits of their bedrooms would be taken up with cricket kit. And they've never kicked up a fuss once. So yeah, no, they've been massively important, and we, as an organisation, we certainly wouldn't be where we are today without their support and help. So no, yeah, been really important.
And how's it been for you? I mean, obviously, as a teenager, you know, most teenagers are worried about trying to get away from mom, get away from dad, get away from the house. You know, obviously, juggling school life and all that. So, I mean, obviously, great maturity from you to be able to probably still want to do all of that, but still arrange this. You know, how difficult has that been?
It's been difficult, to be fair. I think try not to sort of just get like so wrapped up in it all. I've always made sort of like quite a conscious decision to try and keep my school and personal life very separate from this. It's just I'm quite a private person in general. So it was never something that I guess like was overly spoken about at school, and it's certainly like the extent to which some of the activities that we were doing and who we were working with and bits and pieces like that. But I think over the past year or so in particular, I've really started to sort of strike a balance in between sort of playing and fun and work, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, it's, you know, you still got to be a teenager at times. You've got to go out the weekend, have fun, meet your mates and bits and pieces. And that's definitely still a part of me that's alive, don't worry.
And how do you see your work sort of aiding in the impact of cricket's globalization? Because I mean, cricket is currently the second largest sport in the world, but we really truly are untapped in pretty much all of the world. You know, it's basically the Asian population, fortunately enough, that we've got the main populous countries in Asia that are huge fans of the game. So I think obviously with the work that you're doing and the way that cricket is expanding now, obviously going into America, going into the Olympics, which is going to give it a huge global viewership. How do you think that your work, obviously, I mean, already going into countries like Uganda and Uzbekistan, can expand into new regions and obviously help to grow the game in terms of providing kit for people without access to, as you said, manufacturing kit in their regions?
That's a great question. I think the role of grassroots cricket in some of these places is going to be huge. So you mentioned, let's take America, for instance. At a high level, Major League Cricket has done a phenomenal job. The views and the numbers are incredible on paper. But I'd be really interested to then go and have a look at actually what it's done for grassroots participation in cricket. And that's where my interest lies. So I think from a grassroots perspective, it's huge. You can't play cricket properly, especially hardball cricket, without proper equipment. And I think the potential in countries like, in continents like Africa, and I think Rwanda is a fantastic example here. What cricket can do and how quickly cricket has grown in Rwanda is pretty phenomenal. They've got an incredible stadium that's been built by another UK-based charity. They've done incredibly well. in sort of ICC domestic competitions. And I think that's starting to be picked up. If you look at Fairbreak at the women's tournament, the franchise women's tournament, you saw that there was a Rwandan representative who took a hat trick, bowling out some of the best female cricketers in the world. And I think that shows actually how quickly cricket's on the rise in Africa, and actually how crucial that grassroots development, which we're here to support, has been in developing some pretty serious talent, which is now being shown on the global stage. So for us, it's all about grassroots game, how we can get young people and young adults playing the game in areas where it might not otherwise be, if that helps.
No, that's amazing. Obviously, you're a cricket fiend, just like Jordan and I. You have to be sort of a cricket lover to want to do something, that's obviously not what people deem financially rewarding, but the reward that you're giving to people is obviously much bigger than a numerical value. But it's interesting to me, what are your passions outside of cricket? What sort of your, I guess, career perspectives?
So I love my rugby as well. It's cricket and rugby for me. So I play a fair bit of rugby as well. So sport has always been like a massive part of my life growing up. It was kind of like my thing. I think I like music as well. I DJ a bit, and that's kind of like my way of switching off. I just go and get lost in the music, if you like, and blow down the house until 1 a.m. But I think, and from like a career perspective, I don't know. I'd love to do something in this field, not necessarily in cricket, but I think the NGO space or something along those lines. You get a real sort of buzz, and I don't think anything is ever going to be as rewarding as actually impacting and changing someone's life. So it's going to be pretty difficult to step away from that. What that looks like, got no idea, to be honest. But yeah.
I just wanted to quickly ask you, like, from the perspective of obviously doing this from such a young age to where you're now, from a business perspective, what have been the biggest takeaways that you've taken from doing this so far?
That's a cracking question. I've learned so much, and I really enjoy that sort of corporate-y business side of things. It fascinates me, and I'm constantly learning new things on the go and trying to seek advice from people far, far wiser than I am. I think the best piece of advice I was ever given was probably by a chap called Omar, who's my chairman, and he rang me up one day and basically just said, "You've got to keep this focused. You've got so many amazing ideas, and that's not surprising given how young you are, etc. But we've got to keep this focused, and you need to choose one or two things which you can deliver on, and then sort of go from there. Because if you lose your focus and you try and stretch yourself too thin too early on, then it just doesn't happen, and it falls through. So that has been a massive sort of underlying theme of the charity. And the second thing I would say is, from a corporate perspective, under promise and over deliver. And when you're working with corporate sponsors, outline the things which you can agree on and you can give to them sort of as a matter of fact, but then over deliver. What can you do more? What's not in the agreement which is going to boost them and increase the chances of you renewing that agreement next year? That's a massive motto for us as a charity as well.
Definitely not. Really?
No, well, we've done some work with the Foundation of Goodness as well out in Sri Lanka quite a few years ago. So when you said that, obviously the name Kushal and what they're doing up there obviously rang home to me. I think it's important not to sort of forget the importance of what you're doing. So if there's anything that we can sort of do to help you in terms of obviously increasing the viewership or the awareness around what you're doing on a global stage, if you can just mention that to us here, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, of course. I think just following our social media pages and talking to your friends and family about Back for a Chance as a charity. Not necessarily my story. It's not about me. It's about the people we're trying to help. So that's the big thing for me. Word of mouth is huge, and word of mouth marketing, you can't beat it. So following us on socials and going from there, and then donating if you can. All our Just Giving links and donating pages are really easily accessible and designed to sort of just be a click of a button and there you go. We're running a big sort of World Cup fundraising appeal at the moment, and we've got a massive fundraising goal of 100 grand by the end of the year. We're at 75 grand at the moment, and we're doing a big Christmas push. So we hope to get there soon.
Oh, fantastic.
Perfect.
Well, so in terms of obviously like, in our when we post this, we'll obviously put the links in the YouTube page to your site and the social channels. We'll give plenty of people, give everyone opportunity to sort of follow the links and make sure that if they do want to donate, they can do. But obviously, from my perspective here, I just want to thank you so much for joining me and Kieran tonight. I think it's been a real insight for me, but also to hear some of the stories and things. Well, all of the stories, to be honest with you. I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing. Like Kai mentioned, it's a sport that we all feel so passionately about, and the fact that you're going above and beyond to give everyone, all these sort of countries around the world access to play the sport we love is a great job that you're doing, and I can't thank you enough. And it's been great to have you on tonight.
No, thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. It's very kind.
No, thank you very much.
Yes, Will, we really appreciate you, as Jordan said, and continue to do amazing work. Continue to spread joy, be Father Christmas all year round for all cricket lovers around the world.
Super. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.